Hi there, in this video we're going to be talking about basic radio setups for Milsim, LARPing around on the airsoft field, paintballs, Magfed, all that good stuff. Stay tuned and check it out. Okay, so I'm going to run through a basic radio setup that I use for Milsim paintball, Magfed paintball. But what we'll do is we'll start out with basic radios and then we'll work our way up to something slightly more tactical. First off, why would you want a radio system at all when you're out in the field? Most people, your teammates, are in pretty close proximity. You just shout at each other and you can give commands because you're pretty close. Milsim events can be slightly larger in scale, so you could be in multiple fields within a paintball site or an airsoft site. Your teammates could be respawning a quarter of a mile away. So you might not know where your teammates are. You might not know what your faction objective is. If you've got faction comms, they could put over that radio the objective changes. So you could be pushing one direction on the field and everyone else is starting to respawn and move to another objective. You want to stay with the pack and you want to be on the same objective. So radios can help with that. Even on smaller scale events, the good thing is that you can discreetly give information to a person that might be in a position, if you shouted to them, look out, that enemy will hear you and know where they are. You can be close enough to your teammate, but also close enough to the enemy to give your teammate's position away. With radio, you can just discreetly pop on the radio and they'll hear you, but no one else will hear you. So you can give them a heads up without giving their position away. Obviously, radios and tactical situations, Milsim style operations, are obviously suited to radios because the military spends a huge amount to ensure that communication with everyone and everyone's pointing in the right direction. Anyway, in terms of basic radio comms for Milsim events, airsoft, paintball, so on and so forth, all you really need is a cheap PMR radio. As a civilian, you cannot use encrypted comms and you can't use encrypted speech. What I mean by that is you have a code of speech that you use that no one else would be able to understand, that hides what you're saying from the government, isn't allowed. If you're using language, some sort of personal code between you and a friend or you and a group of people, then that is the same as kind of an encryption, whereby it would have to be cracked to understand what you're saying. So encryption and disguised speech, no. Foreign languages and anything that can be transcribed is allowed. That being said, you want a level of privacy and security within your game, because if you're using open channels, anyone could just tune into an open channel and hear what your team are talking about. That starts to get slightly more complicated, but we'll go over that later in this video. Okay, so your basic radio, PMR radios, and that is your general walkie-talkie style device. PMR is probably one of the most widely used bands out there for civilian use because you don't need a license, the kit's readily available and it's pretty cheap. For communicating to groups of people in close proximity to you, it's really good. So examples of basic radios. Here we have a couple of basic Baofeng radios. Now these are, so you see here, these are PMR 446 megahertz. That's the frequency of the PMR bandwidth. This model, this BF88, the E I believe is for Europe, so anywhere in Europe these will get supplied. There's slight differences in different countries, what you can and can't do with these radios. These came as a pair, they do come with a headset. It's very basic, the wires are very thin, it's got a very basic PTT here, but what you do, you connect this PTT in to here, and then instead of having to press the push to talk on the radio, you press this button, you talk, this mic picks up your voice and transmits it. Everything you hear comes in this earpiece, so it's more discreet. These come with one of these each, so you get an earpiece with each of these radios. These are very basic radios. They function very well. Baofeng's a decent make, they function well. Out of the box, the basic radios, 16 channels, and they're open channels. There's no sub-channels. We'll get onto sub-channels in a sec when we bring out the bigger brother of this radio. But generally speaking, basic radios have the channels set to the normal PMR frequencies. There's little to no setup on there that you can go into. A step up from this, you'd have a bit more of a programmable radio. You obviously have your power on, your power off, you have your channels, but then there's also some function to program sub-channels. So for each of these 16 PMR channels, and there's different amounts in different countries, I believe. In the UK, we've got 16. You can select a subchannel, one of 32 subchannels on each channel. People get confused about subchannels. They think it's encryption, and it's not. So if you had on a site 5 teams and 4 of those teams, or 2 of those teams, were using channel 1, they would all hear each other if they were just on channel 1. But if they were set to channel 1 with separate subchannels, so you could have channel 1 with subchannel 2, channel 1 with subchannel 16, because they're all on subchannels that are spaced reasonably far apart, the likelihood is that those teams could communicate on channel 1 on a different subchannel, and they wouldn't hear each other. But if someone was clever and they had bigger brother to this, the Baofeng, that could scan channels, they could set a scan running on channel 1. It would go through all of those subchannels and it would pick up who's chattering on there. So it's not encrypted, it's a filter. So all it allows you to do is look at a channel number and a subchannel number, and then hopefully you can all chat on there. Because it is one of the most widely used frequencies, they've got lots of these subchannels. If you're somewhere where there's lots of people using PMR radios, it's a good bet that you can figure out a channel to use and or a channel and a subchannel, so that other users on that channel don't hear you and you can't hear them, and then you don't get crosstalk. It's very basic, but it's very handy, and it does allow you in Airsoft, Milsim, LARPing, Magfed paintball to be able to set teams up. You can get the subchannels on these radios. It is legal to do it on these radios. It's just not a feature that comes on them. To use a third-party piece of software called CHIRP and a programming cable, which looks like this. Okay, so this is a Baofeng USB programming cable. It does come with a CD with some software on it, but I didn't really get on well with it. There's a free piece of software called CHIRP. Download it, put it on your machine, plug this in, picks up the drivers automatically if you're on anything like a Windows 10 or Windows 11, and then you plug in your radio as you would the headset, turn your radio on. It will pick your radio up as a USB device on a COM port. You select that COM port, it picks up. It's really easy to find in CHIRP. It will be literally the only one that will have anything connected to it. It will bring up all the channels on your radio. If you know that you're going to be joining a team, all you have to do is either program into your handset those details, or you can put them into CHIRP. I'm not going to do a video on how to use CHIRP. I'll link one down in the description that will help you if you want to look into getting CHIRP for programming your radios. Well, this cable costs about £9 over here, $12, $14 in the States maybe, and you can use it for doing the bigger Baofengs that you can program. They can be a bit, we'll get onto one of those in a minute, but they can be a bit onerous to program and get all the settings. And what you can do is you can connect that to CHIRP as well and quickly set it up. Bonus about CHIRP is that if your team or faction have channels that they use, you can have your radio set up in minutes exactly the same as everyone else in your team. You can share the file, and all you do is, they've got a laptop, you plug your device into their laptop and they program your radio for you. That's how they do it, using a bit of software called CHIRP. And if I was to go to an event, I'd either ask for the CHIRP template, program these the same as their setup, so they're all the same. So I've got a backup, or someone else can borrow one. We're kind of going backwards and forwards a little bit. We've gone from basic radios to CHIRP setup to this, that and the other. Essentially, these are basic devices. Both of these as a combined kit cost about £25. You can buy these in sets of like 6 for 50 quid or 60 quid, something like that. Less than $100, you could get 6 of these little radios and have relatively decent basic comms between your team without spending the earth. Moving on from your basic radios like these, you're then going to head towards something like this. So here we have a Baofeng UV 5R. This is a 5R plus. Don't know what the plus means on this particular radio. Still a PMR radio, still on the same channels as these guys here. It's just got a few more bells and whistles, and you can get kind of lost on one of these with all these bells and whistles. For starters, there's 2 different modes that you can operate this in. You can operate in a channel mode, similar to those. On a basic level, you could go channel 1 on here, channel 1 on there, no sub-channels, hit the PTT on here, and you've got communications. You can also set it to frequency mode. Now, frequency mode is where you get the sub-channels. With this radio, you do need to know the channel frequencies numbers, you'll need to know those, and then you just basically program them in with this menu function. I'm not going to go into how to program this style of radio in this video. I'll link the one that I've found the most useful below. There's a few caveats to using one of these radios. If there are any ham radio guys out there, you're going to be throwing things at your TV or your device at the minute. You're going to be saying nasty things about what I'm going to say next. Officially, these radios are known on the PMR frequencies. Ham radio enthusiasts use these to learn the basics of how to scan various frequencies. You can remove these aerials, you can remove the aerial on here, put longer aerials, and you can get longer ranges on different bandwidths, and they're very good for accessing the ham radio world without spending huge amounts on kit. I was dubious about getting one of these and using it because of some of the information that I'd found out. I'm going to share my opinion. Essentially, most people you come across in airsoft and Magfed paintball and any Milsim LARPing scenario event will be carrying these radios. They're very widely used, and as long as you don't misuse them, set to its maximum power. They range from like 1 watt output to 8 watts, 9 watts. If you've got one of these and it's capable of knocking out PMR at 9 watts or 8 watts and you're using it all day to communicate in a daily work environment, you're probably going to get someone complain. If anyone else is on the same channel as you or anywhere near the same sub-channel, they're going to get cross-talk with whatever you're talking about on your radio, because it will just overpower anything else within that radius, especially if there's a group of you using them. There is a 0.5 watt limit on the PMR frequency. What lots of people do is you go into the settings of this radio and you put it down to its lowest output on PMR, which is 1 watt, which is still double 0.5 watt that these are set to. Out of the box, and you can't change that. That's a fixed output on these radios. Technically, that would give you more range depending on the conditions and the terrain that you're using it in. 1 watt is more than enough than what you're going to want to use it for in a LARPing, Milsim, civilian scenario. I'm usually on a field or an event in the middle of nowhere. It's on old disused ground or old MOD or old military sites where you're not encroaching on anyone else's use of the PMR channel, or it's for limited periods and you turn it on and off between games. It's only set to 1 watt and I'm using PMR channels. Just be respectful. It's up to you how you feel about using PMR radio like this that has this capability. I've kind of made my peace with it. I'm not going to abuse it in any way. I'm going to use it for what I intend it to do. When it's on, it's set to its lowest levels. I only use it for my LARPing and Milsim kind of stuff, and then I turn it off, it goes in my bag, and it doesn't get used again until I go to another event. A couple of cool things you can do with these radios. They're easy to set up on the fly. So if, for instance, you go to an event and the channels for your team change, you just go into the frequency mode and you can change it on the fly. Someone else has their radio with them, you read the details off their machine, type it into here, and off you go. You can also lock the keys on here, so if this is in a pocket, you can lock the keys and just doesn't interfere anything. You can also, out the box, remove the aerials off these now, which is why the ham radio guys like them, because then you can do stuff like this. You can get other aerials and you can make them look a little bit more Milsim like. So I've got this aerial here as well. You might be aiming for a certain look with your gear and you might want to have it in a pocket like that, and then you attach it to your chest rig or with bungees so that it looks like a bit more of a Milsim look, because we are LARPing around at heart, aren't we? You could go with something a bit like this, okay, and have that in your pouch on here. Some people have them on their backs with the aerial sort of poking out, so it kind of looks a bit more in line with whatever loadout style you might be going for. You don't have to change the aerial. You're not going to get any issues with this standard antenna. If you plonked that one on, you'd probably get a bit more range. So if you were out on an event and it was spread out over acres of land on an MOD base, and you could be spread out, then a bit more range might benefit you. So having a having an extended aerial might benefit you. It's not necessary, it's just obviously it's just a feature that this radio has that you could take advantage of. It's been a bit of a backwards and forwards kind of discussion about the radios. Essentially, once you've identified the radio you want, then you're looking at options for how you use this device. You can use it just as it is, but unfortunately, if you start using a radio on the field like this, or pinch your chest and open it, it's no more stealthily than shouting. Everyone will hear what you're saying into your radio. You can't help that, but you'll hear what's coming back. And if you have this turned up high, then it's a beacon. Everyone can hear you. Also, if you're in a dark shaded area, lights tend to come on when it sends and receives. So, and these things glow up like fairy lights in pitch black. I have mine in a pouch, so it's completely hidden in a pouch. Using these as just plain radios gives you a step up in communication. In an ideal world, you'd want to be a bit more stealthy. If it's a loadout look thing, having the PTT and a headset of some description is going to add to your loadout. Let's talk about PTTs and other gear. You have your radio. The next step in a basic comms setup is your PTT, the connection between your radio and your headset. I'm going to show you a basic throat mic setup, and then what I'll do is I'll go to my current setup, which is a headset mounted on my helmet and my PTT on my chest rig, show you how that looks together. Next, we're going to need a throat mic setup. Here's my z-tac throat mic, and in here is a PTT and throat mic. So this is one of the first setups. I was keen to use a throat mic. I thought they looked pretty cool. This throat mic does work, but if you use any kind of neck protection, or when they work, they're great, but if you put it on wrong or do something, fiddle with neck protection or whatever, you can move and not get detected. So we've got the PTT and we've got the throat mic. This is effectively your headset and earpiece. If you're interested in this throat mic setup, I did do a video some time ago and where I had it all connected and working and sort of showed you it working, so I'll link that video in the description below. Check that out when you finish this one. For the purpose of this, we're just looking at the hardware. PTT stands for push to talk, and when you press this button here, you generally have a button up on your rig somewhere, and you press it, you talk, and then you let go and you stop talking. Anything that you say during the pressed process of this is then transmitted on here. So when you're transmitting, no one else on that network can talk until you let go. So don't forget to let go. If you talk and then press, you miss that first part of the communication. It takes a bit of getting used to. Listen if anyone's talking. If someone else is talking, wait for them to finish. Then you press the button and then you talk, and then remember to let go. Essentially, all this device here does is replace having to press this button on the radio. This is actually called a PTT as well on here. That's a push to talk and this is a push to talk. Not all connectors fit all radios. Motorola have a dedicated connector. Midland have a dedicated connector. All the military kit has another type of connector. Baofeng use a Kenwood connector. So this is a Kenwood PTT connector. It fits flush in here, that goes in there. You connect that in and then that's good to go. Whenever you press that, it's the same as pressing that. So you no longer have to press the button on your radio, you use this. Obviously this isn't connected to anything. This is a military style connector. And again, not all PTTs and all connections work together. My advice would be, if you're gonna get a z-tac headset, make sure you get a z-tac push to talk with your z-tac headset. Then you can be guaranteed that when you connect your headset, it's going to work all the way through. These military connectors, they come in a variety of standards. The two I know of are Peltor standard and military or NATO. This is a z-tac throat mic, and z-tac, I believe, are Peltor standard. Each of these connectors is wired up to this cable in a certain way, and that is the Peltor standard. You could connect z-tac into Peltor PTTs, and you can connect a Peltor PTT to z-tac. If any of you out there know that for sure or have some more information on that, please hit the comments and just confirm that. That basically connects into there. And then with that all connected up, when you push that button, anything you say will get picked up by the throat mic and be transmitted from the mic, and anything you hear will be picked up by the speaker and then transmitted through the earpiece to here. Okay, and in a nutshell, that's from the radio to headset. the components that you need for this to work. It is very much personal preference. With me being a paintballer, a Magfed paintballer, I have a mask in play, a shamag or neck protection on over here. I also run a sling on my marker here, my T15. I have a sling on there. I found with using this is it's easy for the padded section of my sling to catch the Velcro sections on the throat mic and shift it a little bit. It didn't happen very often, but when it did, it could cause the communications to break up. Also, having a mask on, the earpiece has to go under the mask, and it did get quite uncomfortable because it's a squishy piece on the top here, but underneath it's a hard plastic. What I found when I had my mask on and my helmet on, it was pushing that earpiece in there, and it's not a deal breaker as such. It did hurt my little ear. Poor on me. It did hurt my ear. Started looking for other solutions, and I always said I wasn't going to get a headset because I didn't see the point of getting a headset and having a mask, and I was proved wrong when I got one and tried one. If you're interested in my initial thoughts and my review of that headset, there'll be a link in the description. So my current setup, if I take this out of here, it's all on my rig and everything at the minute. I have same components, different brands. Let's get some of this gear out and I'll show you how it all comes together. Okay, here's my helmet setup, and on here my latest headset configuration. Got the headset mounted on to my helmet. Here's my connector on here. Pull this out. There we go. So I've got my connector on there. So that is my headset and mic. That's on the side. And on here I have my PTT. It's all built into my rig and all the cable management stuff in there. That's my radio pouch on there. I connect in my PTT cable on there. Okay, goes in the pouch. I do stow it away with elastic. So you can see that gets hidden away in there. Connected into here. I get all my mask on, my helmet, and then I plug this in, but that just effectively goes in to there. And then I've got my helmet set up. If you want to know more about this helmet setup, you're interested about how I set this up for paintball, there will be another video going over how I've set up for my headset and all the padding. So watch out for that video. Subscribe, hit the notification buttons, and you'll get notified if it isn't out already. Got the boom mic on the front here and the headset on here. This is a noise reduction headset. Essentially, it works the same as the previous setup, just a different config. This is now my go-to setup. I don't see any reason to be changing it. Get the headset out of the way for now. The thing to know about a headset setup like that, or an Earmor setup, Earmor is not compatible in any way, shape or form with z-tac. Earmor PTT, I think these are about 30 something pounds here, at like $40 or so. My advice would be, if you're going to invest in a decent headset like an Earmor headset, it's a good balance between budget and performance. You don't want to go spending hundreds of pounds on a high-end Peltor, Comtac or Ops Core. The high-end gear costs hundreds of pounds. You can get, for civilian LARPing use, one of these, I think for about just over £100, $120, $150, you can get a decent setup. Doesn't cost the earth, and it functions and works really good. Check out the other video for my review of that setup. That gives you an idea of some of the options you can put in play for your Milsim Airsoft Magfed paintball comms. So when we're looking at pricing, this setup for a basic PMR radio with the PTT earpiece it comes with, you're looking at 2 radios, 2 headsets. So you and a buddy could have comms for as little as $30, $40. If you then want to plug one of these into one of these other setups, you're looking at between $20 to $50 for a PTT, and then you're looking at £25 for a throat mic, 60 something pounds for the headset. Anything from $25, $30, £25 up to $110 to £150 or dollars for the other setup. It doesn't have to cost the earth. You will get lots of fun out of running comms. It's a bit of a learning curve, but you can have a bit of banter with people. So when there's downtime, if you get downtime in a game or you're transitioning between game setups and you're respawning, you can kind of have a bit of banter on your radio between teammates and stuff, a giggle and a chat on the comms. And then you can also use them to really good effect in games by calling out people at distance. Really good fun. It adds another element to your game. At the end of the day, we're looking for immersion into a hobby that we like. One part of that immersion is the gear that you use and the style of markers and how you interact with the scenario in any given game. And the other element of that is to adding comms into how you look and feel a certain way, and then you add comms to it and it gives another immersion level to that. I really recommend it. If you've got any questions, pop them down in the comments. I'll put a bunch of the stuff in the description of this video. All this stuff is widely available on Amazon, and other online stores are available. There's an Earmor shop that you can go to that has stuff like this, and the Europe, USA, UK Earmor store. Post some links down there to the Earmor stuff. Earmor in the US is Opsmen, I believe. So Opsmen is available via Amazon and all that kind of stuff. Baofeng radios you can get on any outlet. They're available everywhere worldwide. Aerials, PTTs, cables, all that stuff I'll link down below. So I hope you found this interesting. Hope it gave you an insight into basic comms and not so basic comms, and gave you some food for thought to get out there on the field. Let me know what you think, whether you're going to run a radio, whether you're not going to run a radio, or whether this video has kind of inspired you to give comms a go. It's great fun, and I personally enjoy running radios, and whenever I can, I try and encourage other people at games and events to try and run comms as well. It does really widen your immersion into the game. Anyway, I'm waffling on. Hope you found this video informative. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video.